Okay, so player housing. This is a theme that occasionally crops up on my channel because it's something that I think would absolutely be of benefit in the World of Warcraft game, but for some reason, and we don't really know what that reason is, Blizzard are very reluctant about it. For many years they've sort of said, we don't really want player housing, but they haven't really nailed down the reasons why. Now, World of Warcraft stands alone on this, really, because other MMOs, some of them have been out for a long time, some of them much more recently. Essentially, all the big titles now, as far as I can tell, have player housing in it. Now, okay, the fact that World of Warcraft doesn't, when a lot of other ones do, isn't necessarily a reason to have it itself, but then you need to look at, particularly in Legion, what is it that Blizzard have been trying to do in terms of a lot of the content it's been producing? They've been trying to retain players. They want players to keep subbed. It's also standing alone in the fact that it's the only big title MMO to have a subscription-only model. In fact, possibly the only MMO to have that of any kind. So they wanted to move away from the pattern of the last few years where people sort of sub when a patch comes out, play the content for a month and then unsub. So they're only really subbed for 2 or 3 months in the year. So what do you do about this? Well, Blizzard tried to produce a lot of content in Legion that would sort of keep you coming back and wanting to play week after week. Now, to my mind, player housing would allow them to do this without all the frustrating aspects that have come with, for example, artifact power. You look at the amount of time people spend going into old raids and old dungeons and doing old content to get transmog gear, to get gear to make themselves look good. And people do this whether they play very casually or whether they play at the higher level, because it's a role-playing game and people like to customize their character. They like their character to be unique. Well, the player housing allows you to do that to the extreme. Proper player housing allows you to be able to create content where people can be chasing stuff for their house. And if you look in some of these games, I could show you what mine look like in, for example, Lord of the Rings Online and Elder Scrolls Online, and also there's player housing in Star Wars The Old Republic and Black Desert Online as well. You know, none of my houses look all that good because in those MMOs I only play very, very casually and I don't do too much of that, so there's nothing very special. But you look at what some people have done and it's absolutely impressive, and you can sort of look at some of these and you can see the amount of work that's gone into it, and you know no one else's in the world looks like that. It's absolutely the best way to customize some aspect of you. Just as an example, in Elder Scrolls Online, this last weekend, there's various ways to get furnishings in Elder Scrolls Online. And by the way, in Elder Scrolls Online, the housing is purely cosmetic. That's all there is to it. Different MMOs have different ways of dealing with it. But in Elder Scrolls Online, it's purely cosmetic. You can craft certain things, so you find patterns and then you're able to craft some things for it. You're able to get some things off the online store. You're able to get some things from online merchants, some things from other content as well. But this weekend, one of the luxury merchants, which normally sells some pieces, was effectively selling a particular type of throne, the Daedric Skull Throne, and you could get it for free. Now, that wasn't a special offer. This throne only existed for this last weekend. So if you weren't on for this weekend and went to get it, you weren't getting it. So, and all that had to be done there is you needed to get an artist to say, design me a thing, an impressive looking piece of furniture. And then you just, every month, or maybe twice a month, but at least once a month, you just have a weekend where you say to your player base, this furniture or whatever, this furnishing for your player house is available this weekend. It's totally free. All you have to do is go to the merchant and get it, but you can only get it this weekend. Well, all of a sudden, you've got a situation where people are thinking, oh, yeah, okay. You can't do that if you're not subbed, can you? You cannot actually go there if you're not subbed. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking to yourself, well, no one's going to sub just for a chair. Well, that is probably not true. But you've also got to bear in this mind, if they sub at all ever, it's because they sort of quite like the game. They're just not necessarily all that impressed with the content in terms of month by month. But this is something where if there's always stuff in the game to get, and you could have it from various sources, so you could have it for crafting. So we're coming up with different ideas when we were discussing this on stream last night for different professions. So I was thinking So obviously leatherworking's easy. That could be making your leatherback furniture and things like that, and maybe even some rugs. You could have tailors that also sort of make sort of tapestries and things like that for the wall. You could have blacksmith with any sort of ironmongery, like fire grates, things like that. You know, all of the professions, if you come to it, like you could even have scribes making wallpaper. You know, so all of the professions could have access to making some things as well. You could also have trophies that are obtainable from doing content during a specific period of time. So whereas at the moment you have like your achievements ahead of the curve and cutting edge for doing raids in a particular period of time, that's all right and that's all well and good. But what if you also got trophies that you could display in your home? And it doesn't just have to be raid content. What if when the PvP seasons were ending, again, there was a trophy that you could get for achieving certain things that, again, you could display in your home? Or what if at various points of the expansion, you got trophies for completing what was considered a very difficult level of Mythic Plus? So there was a time when doing a Mythic Plus 10 was extremely difficult. Well, in that period of time, maybe there should have been a special award for that, just purely cosmetic. And the benefit of this as well is that all of these rewards are cosmetic. They're desirable, but no one can say, oh, I need that to make my character more powerful. It doesn't make your character more powerful. It just makes your character cooler, that's all. But that's a very desirable trait as well. Like weekend type events, all these events that they put in every now and then that last like a day or two, like the hatching of the hippogriffs and all that sort of thing. Again, there could be cosmetic rewards attached to that, again, related to the home. So you could have various things throughout the month, and all Blizzard need to do, obviously setting up player housing is going to require a certain amount of development time, sure, you know, but so did the garrison, and that was a complete disaster. I'm going to mention that in a moment. And so did all that redoing the 1 to 60 cataclysm zones and making a right pig's ear of it. So, and every expansion, they spend development time on things that never come to fruition anyway. You know, they go down dead ends all the way. This is something that is sort of, if you go into it fully loaded and you don't do a half-assed job, this is something that can't possibly fail, because it's so, in every MMO where it's a thing, it's incredibly popular, and it's especially popular in that casual part of the player base that might be the sort of ones that only want to sub every now and then. So now that I've mentioned the garrison, this is one thing that they would need to avoid. What went wrong with the garrison? Well, first of all, I think one big thing that went wrong with it is because people have wanted player housing for such a long time, and the garrison came along and people saw it as a stepping stone towards that. But of course, the garrison had no customization whatsoever. There was zero. You could decide where to place a building. In fact, actually, you couldn't decide where to place a building. You got a choice between here or here. And that was it. You didn't get to choose what it looked like. You didn't get to choose anything really about the garrison. It was just what it was. But also, the big complaint about garrisons was that everyone was spending all their time in it. And why is that? Because it had everything you could possibly want. You had your crafting stations. You had your bank. You could get an auction house there. Everything you could possibly want was there. So there was no reason to go to the city. And in fact, the city we got, you know, the arse end of the Ashran Island, was also fairly uninspiring as well. So there was nothing to really pull us to the main hub area, and there was a plenty of keeping us away from it. Obviously, with player housing, you'd have to be very, very careful about utility. Now, I would say it should be essentially cosmetic. It should be the sort of thing that people can say, do you know what, I'm not interested in player housing. And it'd be like, cool, that's fine. A lot of people would be. But would I have zero utility in it? I did have a couple of things that I think could be in it. The first of all is a mailbox. I don't see that it's any great problem to have a mailbox outside your house. So that would all be fine. The second thing is I would put a couple of bits of utility into it. Nicked off Lord of the Rings Online in this case. Now, in Lord of the Rings Online, it again has 2 or 3 bits of utility attached to the house. The first is a mailbox outside it. As I say, I don't see a problem with that. Now, the second one, inside, there is a chest. Now, you think to yourself, oh, bank access. No, not bank access. Anything that currently exists in the cities where we expect players to congregate should not be in the player house, apart from a mailbox. So what that is an account-wide storage. That's something that's currently missing from World of Warcraft. You know, so we've got our bank slots. We've had that for a long time. We had very recently added the reagent bank. That's a really good idea. So to get your reagents all in one nice space. How often do you find yourself having to mail things between your different characters on your different accounts, which might be crafting reagents, it might be potions. Maybe you've got an alchemist, like I have an alchemist who makes flasks and potions and mails them to another character, or maybe they could just make a stock of them and put them into this account-wide area. It could include augment runes, anything that you might want to dip into on various characters instead of mailing it across all the time. I would have that in there. So it doesn't exist in the game at the moment. That's also something I think people would like. And because it doesn't exist in the game at the moment, if you put that in the player house, it's not something that's taken away from the city either. Now, then you come on to the idea of, okay, so you've just said that people can take it or leave it. If they don't like player housing, they can leave this completely. But now you're talking about putting in a piece of utility that you can only get in the player house. This is true, and this is what I would do about that. Again, if you look at the different games that already have player housing, they have different ways of dealing with it. What you generally get, though, is a scale of quality of house. Now, what I would suggest is you can get anything from small hovel, like the cat lady's house, which wouldn't cost you very much at all, right up to grand mansion type thing. And you could have lots of different locations for these as well. We were discussing, like Tanaris as a zone is like a nice desert area, so there's be plenty of room in that zone to create the sort of player housing neighbourhood there. People talked about Stranglethorn Vale or Sholazar Basin for the jungle type thing. Either of those would be possible. Near Alterac, where there's that large lake, there's room there to be able to place some of these player housing as well. So it would all work pretty well. Then you ask yourself, so how is this going to work in practice? So then what you'd say is, okay, so for the very basic house, which will also include that account-wide storage, it wouldn't cost very much. Someone could just buy it, and then every time they needed to use that account storage, and you'd have we already have loads of Hearthstones anyway. You have a portal. I would do it as an ability rather than an item, because my bag's already filled up with items like that can just teleport us to our house. And it would also be quite good. Now, again, going back to Lord of the Rings, they're introducing, in the next expansion, the Mordor expansion, they're introducing something for, I think it's just for the ones who got the limited edition, like the deluxe digital version. I could be wrong. But they're introducing something you can put in your player house, which is a portal to that zone. And I would do that as well, where you can have, I mean, you could, in this game, you could argue you don't need it. You just use a Hearthstone to get to wherever you want to get to. But maybe it'd be quite nice as a special feature for the deluxe version, where you have a piece, a furniture item that is effectively a portal, kind of like an orb or something that you put your hand on, and it'll teleport you to the latest expansion's main hub. So in the moment, it would be like Dalaran for the Broken Shore, but it might also be, whenever the next expansion comes out, whatever the hub is for that, called Taras maybe. But so here you'd have a situation where if people didn't want to engage in player housing, just, spend, I mean, it could be as little as 10,000 gold or something for the very simplest one. And then you've got your account-wide storage there, no problem at all, easy to get to and from. And if you don't want to do anything else with it, then that's fine. And for other people, again, you could have this situation where it's not just a case of getting a house and then kitting it out. You've also got the potential to get larger and larger houses. And then comes what would be really awesome in my view. And again, you get this in some MMOs, not all though, but I would definitely put it in World of Warcraft. And that is, as well as the player housing, which, as I say, can range from like hovel to grand mansion, you have a guild hall as well. So your guild can actually purchase one of these and maintain it. And guild achievements, special trophies that are just for guild achievements, can be displayed in there. You could have different rooms for different things in there. Again, not the utility side of it. Avoid the utility at all costs. We don't want people. That is a big thing. We don't want to fall into the garrison trap where people spend all their time in this. But it should be nice to spend some time in it. To have this thing that's attached to you. And with a guild hall, of course, you have something that creates a real sense of a guild identity. So, I mean, there are a lot of players who, for example, because in the modern MMO world, you can effectively play this game largely single player. So for a lot of casual players, there's no necessity to join a guild. Whereas something like this, it would help give it a bit of an identity. And of course, it would help you to sort of shine a light on yourself as a guild into, how much of a community you have in that guild. Because you could have people who put some work into making it actually look really good. You could also, it's a really great way to get community involvement from Blizzard's point of view, because you could run competitions on this. So people that have, you know, the best looking player houses or guild houses, 2 separate competitions. And you could initially have a thing, I was talking last night, you could initially have a thing where you've got people, first of all, send screenshots of their house and guild hall in. And, you know, Blizzard could do one of their live Twitch things where they go through them, a bit like Asmongold and Preach do with the Transmog competitions, and get people to sort of say, you know, which ones they think are best, and so on. You could have you could make a show out of that, some real community involvement. Then what you could do is you could have further rounds where Blizzard actually say, look, you know, they port a GM in and says, can I have a look around your house? They get a GM to do a through the keyhole type thing where they wander around it and do a live show, actually showing people some of the cool things that are in it. And then again, you could just keep narrowing it down, have several rounds. And then at BlizzCon, you could actually have the grand finals of this, where again, you're showing some of the best player housing and guild housing or guild halls in the world. And again, get the people at BlizzCon there to vote on the best one. And maybe you could actually create for the winners of each of those categories a special trophy that's an asset in game that they can then display in their house. You know, best player house 2017, something like that. Or probably just best house 2017, as it be an in-game asset. So yeah, so we come back to the issue of why wouldn't Blizzard want to do this? Because although it requires that initial input of development, it just seems to me to be the sort of thing that once you've set it up, runs itself. You just need artists to, you know, produce several new assets a month that you can then put into the most innocuous content. You can actually just tell people, oh, you know, in this pond there is something that's been lost a long time ago, you know, and maybe if you go fishing there, you'll fish it up. And a really small chance to drop. You will get people sitting around that pond 24/7 trying to find the thing, you know, if it looks cool enough. So it's, you know, you don't even have to create lots of new content for it. The developer's point of view, you don't have to create any content at all. You just have to put the asset in the game and give it a way to be rewarded in terms of what's already existing. You know, I mean, you think about people running dungeons where mounts drop. People will just do that, even though there's a really tiny chance that that mount's even going to drop. People like the cosmetic stuff, the non-practical stuff. So anyway, before I end up just going over and over things again, I could talk about this for hours, but I'm going to leave it at that. Put your comments down below. Obviously, my final comment on this one is I know that Blizzard, they've been so opposed to this that nothing is going to change their mind. So I don't think it is anything that's realistically going to come in. But I did sort of feel that I should explain, first of all, how I would implement player housing, but also just how baffling I think it is that we don't have it. But I don't know, you tell me what you think. Maybe someone's seen something that Blizzard has actually said as a reason not to do it, because I have never seen anything other than we don't think it's a good idea. But I hope you enjoyed this video as always. If you did, don't forget to subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.